let's try something for a second. Let's imagine that this story, it isn't just about a battle that happened a long time ago. Think of it more like a blueprint. A blueprint that shows us not just what happened in some frozen field in France back in 1945, but why it still matters, why it still has something to teach us, right here, right now. Okay, let's get into it.
I mean, just look at this. It's insane. On one side, you have 250 elite German mountain troops. These guys are specialists. They live and breathe winter warfare, and they're backed up by 6 heavy tanks. On the other side, well, for now, let's just focus on one single American soldier. You don't have to be a military genius to do this math. It's not a fair fight. It's an annihilation waiting to happen.
Yeah, any military textbook, any general would tell you this whole thing should have been over in minutes. The American position was supposed to be wiped right off the map. But it wasn't. For 1 full hour, one guy didn't just survive. He stopped that entire German attack dead in its tracks. So that's the real mystery, isn't it? How? How on earth is that even possible? And to figure that out, we can't start here, on the battlefield. We've got to go way back. See, the man at the center of this impossible moment wasn't forged at West Point or some fancy military school. He was forged by something much, much tougher, the crushing poverty of the Great Depression, out in the cotton fields of Texas. This is where the story of Audie Murphy really starts. Audie was one of 12 kids born to poor sharecroppers. I mean, his life was hard from day one. His dad just up and left the family. A few years later, his mom died, and that left Audie at just 16 years old as the head of the family. Suddenly, it was on him to provide for his younger siblings. Think about that pressure. This wasn't just about being broke. It was a daily fight to survive, and it built a kind of resilience in him that most of us, thankfully, will never have to understand. So, when Pearl Harbor happened, Audie saw the military as his only way out, a steady paycheck, a way to support his family. But the military, they just saw a scrawny kid. At 5'5" and barely 110 pounds, he was flat out rejected by the Marines and the Navy. They literally told him he was too small to be a soldier. Even the paratroopers turned him down. It was only the regular Army infantry that finally, kind of reluctantly, gave him a chance. And this quote, this explains everything. This is the origin story of his legendary skill. His marksmanship wasn't a hobby. He didn't learn it at a shooting range for fun. It was a tool of survival. Like he said himself, if I don't hit what I shoot at, my family doesn't eat tonight. Every single bullet mattered. Every miss meant someone went hungry. When the stakes are that high, you don't just get good at shooting. You become something else entirely. You become deadly accurate.
Okay, so you've got this raw material, right? This young guy shaped by incredible responsibility, a quiet toughness, and a life-or-death skill with a rifle. The battlefields of Europe were about to take that raw material and sharpen it into one of the most effective soldiers of the entire war.
And his learning curve was steep. I mean, in basic training, they called him Baby. They thought he was just a mascot. But then he got to Sicily in '43, and he found out he was really, really good at fighting. At the Volturno River, he was holding off German attacks by himself. At Anzio, he was taking out tanks. By the time he hit southern France, his lieutenant got killed, and he just took command of the whole platoon. He was no longer a kid. He was a stone-cold, decorated combat veteran. This quote from one of his sergeants, it just says it all. For Audie, it wasn't about anger or rage. It was a completely detached process. It was, like he said, arithmetic. See a problem? Solve the problem. See a German? Eliminate the German. This wasn't the kind of hot-headed fury you see in the movies. It was something way scarier. Cold, calculated, and absolutely lethal. And all of that, the poverty, the marksmanship born from hunger, the brutal lessons of combat, it all leads us right back to this one spot, this frozen field in Holtzvier for France, January 26, 1945. His company had been ground down from nearly 200 men to just 40. They were tired, frostbitten, and a massive German force was about to hit them with everything they had. When the attack starts, things go bad fast. The American tank destroyers supporting them get knocked out. One of them gets hit and just erupts in flames. Murphy orders his men, what's left of them, to fall back into the woods for cover. But he doesn't go with them. No, he runs towards the fire. He climbs on top of that burning M10, totally exposed, and grabs its .50 caliber machine gun. He was standing on a metal box packed with high explosives and gasoline that was on fire. He was literally standing on a bomb with the lit fuse. For the next hour, from that burning perch, he just systematically takes the German attack apart. For 40 minutes straight, he lays down a storm of accurate fire. But then his ammunition starts to run low. The Germans see their chance and start pressing forward again, some getting terrifyingly close. And this is when he does the unthinkable.
But before we get to that, just let this number sink in for a second. 10,000. That's the rough estimate of how many rounds from 250 rifles and 6 tanks were fired at his position during that hour. He was a perfect target, silhouetted against the smoke and snow. The chance of survival in a storm of steel like that is basically zero. So with the enemy just yards away and his machine gun almost dry, he gets on his field telephone to the artillery guys and gives the most desperate order a soldier can give. He tells them to fire on his own location. The officer on the other end, understandably, refuses. He knows it's a suicide order. And Murphy's response? It's just ice cold. I'm giving you a direct order. Fire on my position now. The shells started raining down and the shrapnel tore into his leg, but they also vaporized the German soldiers who were about to kill him. So what was the final score after that hour of pure chaos? The Germans had over 50 casualties. Their attack was completely shattered, and the rest of them retreated. These were elite troops, and they were broken by one man. And Murphy's company, they held the line, and not a single American was lost during his stand. When it was all over, he just climbed off the tank, which blew up a few minutes later, and calmly asked his men how they were doing. For what he did at Holtzvier, Audie Murphy would receive the Medal of Honor. He came home as the most decorated American soldier of World War II, a national hero. And you think that's where the story ends. But it's not. Not even close. Because in a way, his most important fight was just getting started. A fight that wasn't on some battlefield in Europe, but inside his own head. This is the brutal reality. To the public, he was America's greatest soldier, the man with 33 medals, including the highest one for valor. But in private, he was tormented. He suffered from terrible insomnia, constant nightmares. He had to sleep with a loaded pistol under his pillow every single night. He was battling what we now know as PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Back then, they just called it battle fatigue, and mostly just ignored it. His wife, Pamela, put it perfectly. The war never really left him. The things he saw, the things he did, they were with him forever. But and this is what makes his story so important for us today. He refused to just suffer in silence. He made a choice. He decided to turn all that private pain into a very public purpose. This was his second impossible stand. You have to remember, this was an era where soldiers were just expected to be tough, to suck it up. You didn't talk about your feelings. But Audie Murphy, the biggest war hero in the country, started talking. He spoke openly about his nightmares, his insomnia. He became one of the very first public figures to demand that the government recognize and treat the mental wounds of war, helping to break the stigma for every veteran who came after him. And this fight had a real, lasting impact. It wasn't just talk. His advocacy was a huge step forward in how we understand combat trauma. And today, the Audie L. Murphy Memorial VA Hospital in San Antonio, which specializes in treating PTSD, stands as a monument to the fact that his courage didn't stop when the guns fell silent. He never stopped fighting for his fellow soldiers. So, that brings us to the real question at the heart of all this. When you look at the whole picture, the dirt-poor kid, the cold-eyed soldier, the haunted hero, the tireless advocate, what does it all mean? Audie Murphy's life forces us to ask, what is the true price of courage? It's not just about being willing to die on a battlefield. It's about having to live with the memory of what you did to survive, and then finding the strength to turn that pain into something that can help other people. That right there is the real lesson of his impossible stand.